carried. Thank you very much. And now moving on to Vbase. Linda, you're also presenting this one. Tim, we're noting your conflict. Any comments on this?
The SOI has been developed off the back of the workshop that the Chair of the Board and the Chief Executive came in and presented at on the 11th of August. Obviously, COVID has had a drastic impact on their expected outcomes, and the SOI was actually developed and received before the Auckland went into level 3 and we went up to level 2. And that, at that time, I think it was the Women's World Cup cricket tournament was postponed. So in our report, we've noted that Vbase's assumption of moving from 6 events to 13 major events between 2021 and 21-22 was probably ambitious. Those assumptions have fed up into a request for additional funding from Council of $4 million per annum for the 2 out years. That's 21-22 and 22-23, with those what appears to be worsening, a worsening environment for them. I don't know where that number sits now, but that's what's in the SOI is $4 million from Council in those 2 years. It might be worth noting here that of that $4 million, $1 million goes to debt servicing. $700,000 is what they have to pay for the stadium, to manage the temporary stadium, and insurance costs for the town hall and arena are $1.3 million, and there's nothing that they can do to reduce those costs.
So the figures there in the statement of intent, I think we can acknowledge that events is one area which has been particularly adversely affected by COVID, the lockdown, and the ongoing uncertainty around where COVID might affect things in future. So that $4 million figure, whilst that's there in the statement of intent, and we can acknowledge that it's there in the statement of intent, the actual decision making around that is part of our own long-term plan process. So by receiving this statement of intent today, we're not endorsing that budget, because that's part of what happens as part of the LTP decision making.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's quite important to note.
Yeah, the key thing that the increases in out years 2 and 3, that this year is okay. It's there looking for problems in the out years going forward. So it's the 22 year and the 23 year in the SOI, which the first 2 years of the LTP.
And it may well be that as we develop the LTP and we put budgets on for this, we will require a greater level of certainty or a greater level of understanding around how these figures have been arrived at and whether in fact they are the right number before we agree to that as part of the LTP process. But that's a different matter than what we're considering today. All right. Further questions? Yanni.
Thank you. Just on page 137, you talk about the key opportunities lost to Vbase that adversely affect its profitability, including discounts provided to community groups using Vbase venues. But I couldn't see the quantum in here that they were offering per year. Is there any reference to how much money they're making available to subsidise community use?
Yeah, the key thing on these subsidies, every time a community group comes to Vbase, they assess it for each individual event and the venue in which they're in. So the town hall, which is a very expensive place to run, may have a different charging structure than the arena. So they do record it, but I don't think they specifically disclose it. But that's a question we can go back to Vbase management on and say, hey, look, can you provide us with that number? But it forms the community discounts. It used to be as high as $300,000 a year that we provide, and that's been dropping off because of the inability. That's not a sustainable number. But we can go back to them.
Some information, because when we were discussing the town hall, right from before it even was agreed to let Vbase operate it, we raised the concerns around community having access to it, given how much money we were putting in. So So I think we do need to get actually a report on community usage
Of the town hall.
in particular.
I mean, I appreciate there's other Vbase facilities, but in the past, you're absolutely right. We have been given a figure, and it's, you know, love it or hate it, you can at least see what is proposed. In this one, I don't have any sense of how much corporate sponsorship they're giving away versus how much community discount.
On the performance targets on page 8 of the SOI, they have, instead of putting a dollar amount, because they never stuck to that dollar amount because they couldn't differentiate, they couldn't suddenly say to a community group, all of these other ones preceding you this year have had the discount, but we've hit our cap and nobody else's. So it would really be dependent on how many groups were looking for the discount. But they've put in here the number of events. So they've got 30 events this year to receive what they call the local cultural rate, and then 40 in the 2 out years. So that's good.
Right, but I still remember places like the chess competition, you know, or around this table. Remember when the chess people come in, you know, and the local groups come in and say they can't afford the huge increase in rent that Vbase requires, and they can't afford the catering and all the other things that go with it. So, you know, I mean, we can't change this now, can we? This is just giving us information. But can we actually have a note to get a report back or a memo back just around how community access to the new town hall has been working, and what the plans are going forward?
Yeah, I think it would be good to get something back. It certainly was a consideration when we made the bigger decisions around the town hall. It's something, you know, we've always had an aspiration around, having spent the funds in restoring the town hall, wanting it to be used as widely as possible and getting community use through there. And of course, yeah, that's the aspiration. It would be good to see how that's going, what challenges there might be, and that would then feed into any discussions around future statements of intent or future direction that we might want to give to Vbase through a letter of expectation and so on in future. So if we can get that back, that would be good. Just in the form of a memo or a note would be fine. All right, thank you. Are there any further questions? All right, so can I have a mover for this one? Catherine, and seconded Mike. All right, so any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you.